Well, good afternoon, Clear Lake Presbyterian Church. This is Josh Young, your Associate Pastor of Connections. And today I thought I'd just tell you a little story about how I learned to play guitar and my life as a musician. So I actually started taking piano lessons from about the time I was age of 6 and 2 through high school. And that kind of gave me my first musical foundation. I played in band, I played trumpet, and I played the baritone or the euphonium. But I started my main instrument, guitar, probably around middle school. My Auntie Mary had a guitar, and she was a guitar player, and I had expressed interest in playing, and so she let me borrow it for almost a whole year. And my guitar teachers up until that point were probably from two main sources. The first was definitely church, where we had a number of guitar players who were willing to teach me and willing to help me with the instrument, and so I learned a lot of that's where I learned a lot of my chord shapes and chord forms and early worship songs like Lord, I lift your name on high. And then my second source was my 8th grade teacher, Mr. Haggard, who was a guitar player as well. And at that time, there was a lot of kids who were interested in playing guitar. And so he opened up his classroom for kids after school, I believe on Fridays, who wanted to come and learn guitar. And that's where I learned actually some of my first rock and roll songs as well. At the time, bands like Nirvana and Green Day were popular, so I would learn things like, About a Girl by Nirvana, like I need an easy friend, I know I can understand. I sang that really terribly, sorry. But that kind of started me down the path, and I grew to learn guitar more and more. I remember in high school seeing Carlos Santana play for the first time, both on TV and then live, and was really inspired by him, so I started to learn a lot of his stuff, like around that time as well, I was learning a lot of, like I said, Green Day, a lot of Nirvana, a lot of alternative music, and also kind of got into the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix around that time, so I started to learn some of those songs, like, or, But it was also around that time in high school that I started leading music for church, and was a worship leader, as they called them, for my church's, we had a weekly youth service on Sundays, and also playing for youth group. And I gotta say, kind of thinking back and looking back, we were pretty terrible back then, but we got better as time went along, as we started growing as musicians, as I started to grow as a guitar player and as a singer, and was really formed musically at that time by the church and church music as well. Fast forward through college, I started picking up the bass guitar and playing that in worship bands, and eventually started leading music in the church that I was attending at the time in college, and stayed on there for a few years until seminary. In seminary, I decided that I was going to get my MDiv in worship theology and the arts, and that kind of gave me a lot more theological background as a church music leader. It's also at that time I started going to a Presbyterian church and playing worship music for them as well, and became their main worship leader through that time. And fast forward all the way here to Clear Lake Presbyterian Church, where after spending a year as the youth director, Pastor Steve asked if I would consider being the contemporary worship director for a few years, and I said yes to that. And that's kind of how I've been as a musician, playing guitar, playing in worship bands, learning how to play instruments like the bass guitar and the mandolin along the way. Has also been a part of my journey. And I will say this for anyone who wants to get into this, who wants to continue to become a musician, be faithful to the call and practice. Practice a lot. So, God bless.